Chapter 4. I slid into the car, closing myself in when I shut the door behind me. I could just back out of the driveway, away from these people ruining my holiday even more than it would have normally been. I thought he was crazy, stone cold nuts, but intrigued, I pressed the button to unlock the door. He smiled and pulled the handle, then slipped inside next to me, the interior of the car filled with the scent of his cologne, cool, crisp, woodsy with an edge. So, I eyed him. So, he stared at me. Where am I supposed to be taking you? Everything's closed. He shrugged a shoulder. Doesn't matter, just away from here. I sighed and put the car in reverse, then backed out of the driveway and meandered through the subdivision until I got to the main road. There were a few shops, restaurants, and bars along the highway. I prayed something close would be open. Minutes later, after wandering streets that resembled more a ghost town than booming metropolis, I pulled into the parking lot of an Italian restaurant that was open and bustling with business. We can at least get dessert, some coffee, sit a while. This works for me, said Will, already stepping out of the car and heading to the front door. He held it open, and I walked inside, where I was enveloped by the scent of fresh garlic bread and marinara sauce. Two, please, I told the hostess, who showed us to a table in a sunny corner of the restaurant. I flipped right to the end and perused the dessert menu, trying not to feel odd about being on an impromptu date with a man I didn't know, who was the brother of a man I used to date, who had summarily rejected me not once or twice, but 3 times in the span of a few hours. Why don't we get the dessert platter? He suggested. It comes with options, and we can both try a few things. I don't know about you, but I can put away some sweets. Sure, if you want. I closed my menu and slid it to the edge of the table. So, you and Jay aren't full brothers. How much younger are you? 4 years almost. We have different mothers. You must both take after your father. Will smiled. If he could blush, he'd probably be the shade of a red delicious apple. Is it that obvious? Like looking at a set of twins, practically. But you seem much different than Jay. He folded his arms and settled them on the table, shrugging a shoulder. Not saying I can't be a jerk now and then. I'm human, but nah, I don't drink like him. How long has he been like that? And is that why his wife left? He doesn't handle stress well. The business nearly falling apart. The business nearly failing almost did him in. I'd say it's been building for a while, but only really got bad in the last year. He sipped a few swallows of the water the waitress had left. And yes, that was a big reason his wife took off. The drinking, plus not having any money. She said that wasn't what she signed up for. I guess I see both sides. Both sides? Yeah, I get her point. But I also believe that marriage vows are real in sickness and in health for richer or poorer and all that. But if he's calling her names, getting drunk, not taking care of her, she's supposed to honor some vows? That's far beyond rich or poor, sick or healthy. What about his vows? His role? I shook my head, taking a few swallows of water myself. No sense in getting worked up about a man that dumped me to date several women of varying race and size. I had no dog in this fight. Will chuckled and leaned forward. Let's not talk about my brother. He's taken up too much time and attention that I want to spend on getting to know you. My face burned hot. I couldn't look at him for very long, otherwise, my thoughts would begin to trend toward pathways it hadn't traveled in a long time. It had been a while since I'd had more than brotherly thoughts about a man, since I'd craved strong arms around me and the scent of masculine cologne and the deep tenor of a voice that made me feel like I was safe. All right, let's talk about something else. Okay, he smiled, his eyes twinkling at me. You must not have family close by if you spend Christmas with Faith and Anthony. It was an innocent enough observation, at least I was sure he thought it was, but the question had, for years, made me uncomfortable. It forced a conversation that I hadn't been getting better at enduring, and though I knew I didn't have to have the conversation, I wanted to. No, not really. My parents, I blinked, making an effort to keep my emotions at bay. I have some aunts and uncles scattered around, but Faith and Anthony are my only close family. A shadow crossed his face. His gaze dipped to his water glass, then flicked back up to me. I'm sorry. I was curious. I didn't mean to bring up a sore subject. It's okay. I don't talk about them often. Not everyone needs to know my business. You can talk to me. I'd love to know more about you. Everything about you, actually. I almost laughed and had to stop myself from rolling my eyes. Is that so? You're curious about your brother's college ex girlfriend? Sure. I'm curious about all kinds of interesting things like what kind of books do you like to read? What does your name mean? What's your signature drink? Do you travel? What do you think about when you're alone, in your quiet time? I laughed. You're pretty damn curious. So I like to read a little bit of everything: biographies, self help, some crime drama, a little romance, some literary highbrow, and yeah, I like to read children's books to the babies at the nursery. Okay, he said, laughing. We have some interests in common, though I have a heavy daily newspaper and Time, Newsweek, Financial Times habit. He sipped more water and waved a hand at me. Go on. Um, I shifted in my seat, unbuttoning my light jacket and slipping it from my arms to lay it on the seat next to me. Not only was it warm in the restaurant, Will's pointed, steady gaze with those dark eyes was heating my insides to a near boil. I could hardly breathe under his stare. My name is Arabic. It means fortunate. I like a glass of Cabernet, but I'd rather an amaretto sour if you know what you're doing. I love to travel. Faith and I take a trip every year when I'm done with my school year. I usually need it. I finished with a sigh and a roll of my eyes. He nodded. You're a teacher, right? Yeah, I understand that. You deserve it. Will paused, though still staring. And he prodded. And what? The last question. What do you think about in the quiet times when you're alone? I was grateful the waitress stopped by to take our orders. I added coffee to our dessert platter, and by the time she left our table, I still wasn't sure I could even get the words out. I really don't ever talk about this, and I'm not sure why I'm talking about it now, but I pulled my phone from my purse, unlocked it, and opened it to the Photos app. There were several there were several that I never deleted that I looked at every day. When I'm alone, in the quiet time, I think about my parents. I flipped to a photo and turned the phone around so Will could see it. It had been taken in Jamaica at my parents' 30th wedding anniversary. The beautiful chocolate brown couple bore wide smiles and had their arms around each other. 5 years ago today, there was an accident. I'd picked them up from the airport after this trip. They were excited, telling me all about their vacation. I was driving, it was raining, I got distracted. I would have seen the drunk driver cross over the median if I'd been paying attention. I flipped the next photo, one of a man who had proposed to me only weeks before. My fiance and my parents were in the car. My parents were killed. He suffered severe injuries, but he survived. Will's mouth made a perfect O shape as he stared at the photo, but he broke off our engagement a few weeks after he got out of the hospital. I clicked the button along the side of the device, locking and sealing the photos away again, sealing away my past again. The driver who hit us totaled his car, but walked away from the accident with minor injuries. He's serving 10 years for vehicular homicide. He'll probably be out in a few years. Then he can resume his life, I suppose. I frowned. My parents will still be dead. My ex-fiance will still walk with a limp. I am so sorry, Saida. I really am. I didn't mean to bring up a painful memory. It's not so much painful as there. Always there. It's been 5 years and I still associate this season with losing my parents, with losing a man I thought I loved, that I thought loved me enough to honor those vows he was about to take, with knowing that even though that driver was sorry, being sorry and eating three squares and watching the People's Court every day doesn't make up for the past 5 years. Of course not. Nothing makes up for losing your parents, losing someone you love. I glanced up and offered him a wry smile, blinking back tears. Wow, I really went there. I'm extremely maudlin on Christmas. I need some new memories, I guess. Will reached across the table and took both of my hands into his. His fingers, coarse with the markings of manual labor, rubbed the backs of mine. Every swipe of his fingers across my skin was soothing. Maybe you could associate today with being invited out to a glass of wine, or an author lecture, or somewhere down the line, a little getaway somewhere. I'm sure Faith is a great travel partner, but I know my way around an all inclusive resort. My eyes narrowed and my head tilted to the side. I was confused. I'd heard his words, but are you trying to suggest that we date? An eyebrow rose. Any reason we can't? Or shouldn't? Well, I used to date your brother. I'm not concerned about that at all. Jay's definitely not concerned. And you're 4 years younger than I am. 3.5 if you're the same age as Jay. I'm definitely not concerned about that. We get along, so far at least. I'm old enough to know what I need to know. I'm mature and responsible. Besides, my grandmother used to say, a new broom sweeps well. You know what that means? No? What? It means younger men do it better. That made me laugh loudly. I hadn't really laughed in so long that it made my throat hurt. So, what about you then? You and Jay don't have any family here? Is that where you're freeloading at Faith's dinner table? Sort of. Jay and I have two sisters, also half sisters. Papa was a Rolling Stone, I guess. Did you know that? I shook my head. As much time as I spent with Jay, we weren't good for talking. And the more time I spent with Will, the more I saw what my life would be like had I ended up with Jay. And I was so grateful that he'd been a little playboy and dumped me. So, Mom and Dad are gone. We have some family, but they're spread out. We usually run a tight work schedule, so traveling for the holidays is tough. I normally spend Christmas with Jay and his wife, but this year, Will rolled his eyes and laughed. You don't have someone special that you share holidays and once yearly occasions with? Well, I guess I should come clean, he said, after a moment of hesitation. The way my heart threatened to gallop out of my chest was frightening. If this man was about to show me his girlfriend, I was going to go off. He pulled out his phone and scrolled a few photos. He handed the phone to me, a smile trying hard to twist his lips out of the smirk he was giving me. That brat right there has me wrapped around her fingers, or her paws. I looked down at the phone and smiled at the miniature puff of fluffy white fur that seemed to be posing for her glamour shot. "Aw," I cooed. "What's her name?" "Coco. She's a Bichon Frise, about 3 years old, spoiled as hell. Other than her, I don't have anyone I share my special moments with." He smiled wide, then, "I'm working on it, though. Got someone in mind." Our dessert arrived and the coffee arrived. We bickered softly over who would get to try the double dark chocolate cake first, who would get the last bite of cheesecake, which of us would take the tiramisu home. I asked Will a litany of questions from where he attended high school to his college major to his preference for tea over coffee and nonfiction over fiction, and for the first time in 5 years, I was actually smiling, laughing, enjoying myself, and not feeling guilty about it. In my bag, my phone vibrated. I waited until Will was sliding his credit card into the leather envelope to check it. Faith Thomas. "Girl, what are you doing?" I giggled as I tapped out a message in response. "On our way, back in a bit." Faith Thomas. "That is not even what I asked you. Where are you? Why did y'all leave this drunk fool here for us to deal with?" We needed to escape, so we left, had some dessert, talked. Really talked. "He's cute." Faith Thomas. "I spent hours making 2 cakes and you two left Christmas dinner to go eat dessert somewhere." Did I mention he's cute? When is the last time I said somebody was cute? And he is nice, unlike his brother. He was trying to make up for Jay. How is he, by the way? Faith Thomas. Passed out and drooling on my suede couch. After he bitched about his wife for an hour. I told Anthony to never invite anybody over here ever again. I'm sorry, but I am cracking the fuck up. We're on our way back. Will take his brother home and he'll be out of your hair. Faith Thomas. And then I'm going to put these kids to bed and drink an entire bottle of wine. Faith Thomas. And don't think you're getting out of telling me about this whirlwind date you decided to go on. I laughed, locking the phone and tucking it back into my purse. Will stood, then reached for my jacket, holding it while I slid my arms into it. Ready? He asked. I nodded, slipping my hand into his. We in trouble? Oh, yeah, I answered, snickering. It was worth it, though. It really was, he said, grinning over at me. And then that brown eye winked at me again. Chapter 5. I was in no hurry to get back, so I took my time, meandering through the neighborhood, the bare tree branches kissed by the rose glow of dusk. Talking to Will had become easier the more time we spent together. I suddenly had so much to say and someone new to say those things to. I only hoped he felt the same. I pulled into the driveway behind the SUV. I chuckled again at the parking job. Did Jay drive here? Will dipped his head, an embarrassed half grin on his lips. He picked me up. I shouldn't have let him drive. I hope you don't have too many problems getting him out of here. Me too. And he and I are going to have a talk about his drinking. He could have hurt someone. Will glanced over at me, not with pity, but a gentle sympathy. I smiled back, grateful that he'd internalized what it meant to me to not lose my parents the way I did. It would mean a lot to me if you'd talk to him about that. Tell him about my parents. He can make up for today by not hurting anyone with his drinking. Sure, he sighed, his gaze traveling to the front door of the house, a brilliant red against the light-toned brick. I guess I better get in there and rescue Faith and Anthony, but could I? What? I asked when he paused. I can't decide what to ask first. To kiss you or to see you again. I let a sultry chuckle fall from my lips. The answer's going to be yes either way. Just in case I didn't make it clear, I apologize for my brother. Deeply. But from now on, things are going to be about me and you. I'm going to call you tomorrow, and we're going to talk about things that have nothing to do with Jay Hunter. How does that sound? Deal, I started to say, but it was cut off by warm, thick lips dusted with sugar from multiple desserts. I moaned, twisting in my seat to get closer, but he pulled back and broke off the kiss. To say I was disappointed would be an understatement. Gotta leave you with something to look forward to. He winked at me. That gorgeous eye winked at me again. The dome light popped on as he opened his drawer and began to exit the car. Good night, Saida. Talk to you tomorrow. We'll do some work on reshaping your Christmas memories. Okay, I said as I exhaled a breath. I'm not even sure I actually said the word. Good night, Will. The front door opened, spilling light from indoors into the yard as I pulled away. I should have gone inside, talked to Faith, gossiped about my date, had some wine and some more cake. But I really wanted to be alone, and not in a bad way. I wanted some time to myself, to sit and remember and smile about my afternoon, to think about something besides the images that had plagued me for years, the sadness and loss that had been my constant companion, but now seemed to have ebbed away. I had a new Christmas memory and a small spot of hope. I wanted to spend some time thinking about that for a change.